On a remote hillside, researchers were recording a wolf pack silently approaching a grazing herd of deer when suddenly, before the wolves even came close, every single deer bolted and ran. This shouldn't have been possible. The wolves were approaching from a direction their scent couldn't reach. They couldn't smell them. They weren't visible. Trees blocked the view. Sound? The wolves were silent. This was their standard hunting tactic. But still the deer sensed the approaching danger and scattered in an instant. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Montana State University calls this the fastest collective response seen in nature. Zebra herds rely on visual signals. Rabbits sense the slightest vibration. But what about deer? They have a secret communication system based on tail signals. Tonight we'll discover how deer talk in an invisible language and how one animal's panic signal saves the entire herd within seconds. If this secret survival system fascinates you as much as it does me, like and subscribe. Write in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is there, and what surprises you most about deer. You're the reason we keep exploring nature's secrets. Thank you for being here. First, let's note that researchers don't fully agree on the findings we'll be discussing. Some information is not definitive. Now let's dive into how deer use this hidden language among themselves. At the edge of a wooded clearing, a deer was grazing when something in the air changed. It lifted its head. Its ears rotated independently, scanning the surroundings. Then its tail appeared. It went up, then down. The forest suddenly came alive. The deer herd scattered in perfect harmony. The entire scene lasted maybe 3 seconds. Think about your own reaction time when someone calls your name. You flinch, look around, then try to figure out what's happening. Deer don't have that problem. They've developed such an efficient communication network that a single individual's warning spreads to the entire group almost instantly. No debate, no hesitation. Deer announce danger in 3 different ways simultaneously: visual, auditory, chemical. Each one reinforces the other, so even if conditions aren't perfect, the message still gets through. Is dense fog blocking visual signals? The snort sound can still be heard. Is the wind in the wrong direction for scent? The tail flick is still visible. These methods are both simple and surprisingly effective. Let's start with what you can see: tail flagging behavior. When deer sense danger, they wave their tails, creating a flash, and with this they alert other deer in the herd. This white flash is not random. This visual signal serves as an alarm that warns other nearby deer of potential danger. We used to think this movement was a signal to the predator, as if saying, "I saw you, I'm faster than you, don't bother." But recent findings today show this isn't the case. Field observations show the tail is used for multiple purposes. A half-raised tail means caution. The deer has noticed something unusual but hasn't decided to flee. A fully erected tail means direct danger. Run now, think later. In open terrain, we've also observed that deer notice tail signals from distances exceeding 200 yards. But here's what makes the system extraordinary. Position tells only part of the story. The speed of movement tells the rest. A slow, rhythmic wave indicates mild concern. The deer is alert, but not panicked. A fast, jerky movement signals escalating threat. And when a deer throws its tail up and locks it in an upright position before running, other deer who see this give the same response. So for deer, moving in herds makes more sense. because if they move alone, they have to stay constantly alert. But when they're in a herd, they're more relaxed. Researchers tracked response times in white-tailed deer herds across different habitats. In open meadows where visibility stretched for hundreds of yards, the average delay between one deer raising its tail and the entire group responding was 0.7 seconds, less than a single heartbeat. In dense forests where visibility dropped to 50 feet, about 15 meters, less than a single heartbeat. In dense forests where visibility dropped to 50 feet, about 15 meters, this delay increased to 1.2 seconds, still faster than 2 blinks. This mechanism isn't just about the tail. Let's look closely at the calm body language a deer displays when disturbed by something. Ears slowly rotate forward, head rises slightly, neck extends gently. The body softly turns toward whatever caught its attention. A slight tension may appear in the front legs. Each of these small movements silently tells other deer in the herd something. Another communication method for deer is stomping their feet on the ground. Female deer especially stomp their feet to warn others when they feel concerned about their safety. This is a very effective method because during foot stomping, other deer are alerted in 2 different ways. Visually, meaning the foot stomp. Through sound, meaning the slight noise during the ground strike. But what about scent? This is where things get interesting. Each deer has specialized glands between its hooves, interdigital glands. Every step leaves a small amount of scent that marks the deer's path. When a deer stomps in alarm, these glands release an intense odor. Other deer approaching that spot later detect the persistent chemical trace. This is a delayed warning system. Even if the threat has passed, the scent remains there for hours, giving a "there was danger here" message to any deer passing through that area. The tarsal glands complement this. These glands produce one of the most distinctive scents a deer emits. During normal movement, secretion is minimal, but stress increases the secretion. As a frightened deer runs through the forest, it leaves a scent trail that other deer can follow, or more importantly, avoid. Now let's move to sound, the snort. If you've spent time in deer habitat, you've probably heard it. A short, sharp exhale that can reach very long distances in still air. The snort sound is quite distinctive and can be heard from a distance of 200 to 500 yards depending on weather conditions. This range matters. Visual signals don't work in darkness. Chemical signals depend on wind direction. But sound spreads in all directions, reaching even deer at distances where tail signals can't be seen. There are 2 types of snorts. The alarm snort is a single, powerful burst. It means, "I noticed something wrong." The snort wheeze is more urgent. It says, "Run right now." When deer hear the snort wheeze, they usually run toward cover without even stopping to look. They don't think, they just flee instantly. Another finding that surprised researchers is the distribution of snorting behavior. Females in family groups snort far more often than male deer. Studies show female deer snort in 40% of alarm situations, while males do this in only 10%. The explanation lies in social structure. Females live in tight family groups with their young and juveniles. Within-group communication ensures everyone's survival. Male deer, especially mature ones, mostly roam alone or in small groups. They rely more on individual vigilance, less on group coordination. When three channels work simultaneously, a harmonious communication system emerges. Imagine watching a deer herd grazing in the forest from a distance. A young female at the edge of the herd is carefully listening to her surroundings. A light breeze passes. The animals silently adjust their positions, watching each other's movements. Even if distance doesn't decrease, you can notice this alert state slowly spreading through the herd. One deer catches the slightest warning flash. Its tail goes up. Instantly, every deer in the group turns toward it. Multiple deer stomp their feet. The sound echoes through the forest. The female deer snorts. Chemical alarms fill the air. The entire herd disappears running within seconds, and the wolf's ambush is broken. But deer don't always give correct alarms. A false alarm wastes their energy and creates unnecessary stress. Accordingly, when deer hear a warning, they don't immediately run. They wait for confirmation from other deer, and after receiving this confirmation, they take action. A young deer's main defense against predators is to hide, because they don't know the communication system. Accordingly, mother deer teach this system to their young. Young fawns don't instinctively know which stimuli require alarm. They learn this by watching their mothers and group members. A fawn's first autumn passes with constant training. They watch how adults respond to various disturbances. They see in which situations tails are raised, in which they're not. Studies tracking fawn survival rates show that young of experienced females with strong alarm behaviors survive at much higher rates compared to young and inexperienced mothers. The communication system isn't just genetic, it's cultural. It's passed down as learned behavior from generation to generation. The question that kept researchers busy was this: how do deer coordinate group responses without a designated leader? In many populations, one individual takes on the sentinel role, watches for danger while others feed. But deer herds don't work this way. Multiple individuals are alert simultaneously. When one senses danger and signals, others don't wait for confirmation. They trust the warning and respond. It's predicted that increasing herd size will reduce predation risk for deer and increase predator detection. More deer scanning for danger, more ears listening for unusual sounds, more noses testing the wind. All of this maximizes safety. This alarm system is a result of the natural processes deer have gone through for a very long time. By adapting to many situations they encounter in the forest, they've developed these silent communication paths they use today. Over the years, the most effective signals have been preserved, others have slowly disappeared. The behaviors we see today are the matured state of this long evolutionary journey. But something changed in recent years. As large predators disappeared from much of North America, deer populations exploded. In many regions, deer now live with very little predator pressure. The question becomes this: what happens to the alarm system when the threats that shaped it are largely gone? Early observations show these behaviors persist even without predators. Deer living in suburban settings without natural predators still raise their tails, stomp, and snort at perceived threats. The system is now deeply ingrained. Even your dog wandering in your yard can put a deer grazing in your yard into full alarm response. This defense system, the product of millions of years of evolutionary pressure, works flawlessly. But the defensive repertoire of deer isn't limited to just detection and escape. Male deer carry one of nature's most astonishing weapons: antlers. And the biological performance they achieve to grow these antlers from scratch every year is perhaps even more impressive than their alarm systems, because no other tissue among mammals regenerates at this speed. Chapter 2. Imagine a bone that grows so fast you can measure the difference between its morning size and its evening size, not over months, not over weeks, every day visible progress. This is exactly what happens on a male deer's head every spring. You're used to thinking of bones as permanent structures. Our skeleton completed its development years ago. Maybe you injured your arm once and waited weeks for it to heal. In mammals, bone growth generally occurs over long time periods through careful and methodical processes. Deer antlers follow none of these rules. Deer antlers grow rapidly during spring and summer while in soft tissue, reaching growth rates of 3 to 4 inches per week in young deer and 1 to 2 inches per week in adults during peak growth period. Think about this speed for a moment: 1.5 inches per week, roughly 1/4 inch every day. For a mature male deer forming a complete set of antlers, this means creating over 200 inches of solid bone in 4 months. The process begins in late winter. A deer's hard antlers from the previous fall's mating season start to loosen at their bases. The connection between the skull and antler weakens. Within days, sometimes hours, the antlers simply fall off. They're shed, gone. What remains are 2 small round bone areas on top of the skull. From this point, the healing process begins. Within a few weeks, a thin scab layer forms over these 2 round bone areas. As this protective surface develops, cells underneath slowly organize and begin preparing the structure needed for new antler growth. In most deer species, antler growth begins immediately after the scab layer forms. There's no pause. There's no recovery period. After the old antlers drop, the process that initiates formation of new antlers kicks in right away. The first structure emerging from these bone surfaces looks nothing like the hard antlers we see during hunting season. Initial growth consists of soft tissue covered with fine, fuzzy skin. We call this covering velvet, and the name finds its exact match. When you touch it, short hairs extending straight upward feel covered with oily secretions. The tissue resembles actual velvet fabric, soft and slightly warm, but calling it just skin would be missing the remarkable biology underneath. This velvety tissue in this first growth phase is not ordinary. It's a vascularized tissue containing the nutrients and minerals needed for rapid bone formation. What enables antler growth is powerful blood flow. Vessels running through the velvet layer carry oxygen and nutrients directly to growing regions. Without this continuous flow, antler growth would stop very quickly. Blood support makes this possible. Arteries extending throughout the velvet carry oxygen and nutrients directly to growth zones. Without this constant flow, growth would stop within hours. This process requires a specific amount of nutrients, minerals obtained from diet, namely calcium and phosphorus, are important sources of antler material. A mature male deer must obtain several pounds of calcium while growing a complete antler set over a summer. But here's the problem. Deer don't get much calcium from their normal diet. Grasses, leaves, and herbaceous plants contain little of these minerals. So where do these minerals come from? The deer's skeleton works like a mineral source during this period. Calcium in the bones dissolves and gets directed to developing antlers. To meet calcium needs, deer have been observed gnawing on shed antlers during antler development. Growth rate varies throughout the season. In April, development is relatively slow. Daylight hours are still increasing. The deer's body is recovering from the stress winter created. In many regions, food quality is limited. In these regions, small protrusions form and total growth of 1 to 2 inches may be seen. May changes everything. Vegetation begins to revive across the landscape. High-protein foods are abundant. Daylight extends to late evening hours. Hormonal signals directing antler growth strengthen. By the end of May, the basic structure of the antler set starts to become visible. The main sections of the antler begin to lengthen. The first protrusions begin to branch. June represents peak growth rate. Dr. Yang, an orthopedic researcher at Stanford, said, "Deer antlers grow 2 centimeters per day, about an inch, during peak growth period. In a single day. If you marked a point on a growing antler in the morning and measured again in the evening, you could detect the difference. This bone growth rate makes deer antlers the fastest growing bone tissue among all mammals. Researchers studying molecular biology discovered 2 special genes directing this extraordinary growth. One of these genes makes cells multiply faster. The other supports the mineral process needed for the antler to harden and turn into bone over time. When Dr. Yang deactivated one of these genes to confirm this, he saw that bone tissue didn't grow as fast as before. Bone grows even without these genes, but not as fast as before. But speed alone doesn't explain everything. The developing antler has no protective shell. There's no muscle around it. Tissue exposed to open air is vulnerable to every bump and scrape. During this period, male deer become extraordinarily careful. They avoid thick brush. They move more slowly in tight spaces. Any damage to the velvet or growth regions can lead to permanent deformities in the antler. The velvet itself provides some protection. This skin is sensitive, so when a velveted antler is touched, the deer immediately pulls back. This sensitivity prevents most damage, but some accidents can still happen. Broken protrusions, irregular growth patterns, asymmetric antlers. Most of these abnormalities result from small damage the antler receives during the velvet period. In July, the growth pattern changes. Antlers have reached most of their final size. Protrusions are completely formed. What remains is the hardening process. Soft cartilage begins to harden into actual bone through calcium accumulation. This hardening period begins after the rapid growth phase. The transformation starts at the base of the antler and progresses toward the tip. The base, where the antler connects to the skull, hardens first. Then this hardening slowly advances toward the tips over weeks. As each section hardens, blood vessels in that section also gradually close. The tissue no longer needs oxygen and eventually becomes static, hard bone, like other structures in the skeleton. This entire cycle takes approximately 130 days from shedding to completion of hard antler. Between 4 and 5 months. During this time, a mature male deer has formed 15 to 20 pounds of bone on its head. This process requires tremendous energy. Nutritional needs increase greatly, yet every male deer capable of reproduction goes through this process every year. Why? The answer lies in mate selection. Female deer evaluate male deer partly based on the size of their antlers. Larger, more impressive antlers indicate genetic quality and physical health, Males with superior antlers win more fights, hold better territories. Territory-holding behavior isn't unique to deer. Wolves, the natural competitors of deer, manage very wide territories, some protecting massive areas exceeding 1,000 square miles. In our next journey, we'll discover how wolves manage these vast habitats. But now let's return to deer. Antlers are natural markers reflecting a deer's overall condition. They can't be artificially altered. A deer in poor health can't develop strong antlers because this process requires high amounts of minerals and energy. A weaker antler structure silently indicates to females and other males that the individual isn't in optimal condition. This honesty makes antlers reliable indicators across the population. You can assess a deer's overall condition by looking at its antlers. Wildlife experts use this information when evaluating the herd's general health. Poor antler development in many individuals indicates nutritional limitations in the habitat. Excellent antler growth points to abundant food resources. The regeneration process also attracts the interest of medical researchers. Humans can't regrow bones. We repair fractures, but this isn't the same as recreating an entire structure. If we can understand the biological mechanisms that allow deer to grow, antlers from scratch every year, applications in human medicine might be possible. Faster fracture healing, treatments for bone diseases. The genes Dr. Yang identified represent the first steps on this path. The genes we mentioned are also found in humans. They play a role in bone development in humans, but not at the speed seen in deer antlers. For now, antler growth remains a process we observe. Every spring, male deer shed their old antlers and begin growing new ones. 2 centimeters of growth per day, fast enough to be noticed by eye. This impressive reconstruction ability is certainly impressive. But deer have another ability for survival, an extraordinary sense of smell. Chapter 3. Think about the last time you walked into a bakery. That warm bread smell hit you immediately. Your brain registered it, maybe made your stomach rumble. Simple, direct. That's roughly 5 million olfactory receptors doing their job. Now imagine possessing 300 million of those receptors. Imagine detecting not just the bread, but the specific wheat variety, the yeast strain, the minerals in the water, the baker's hand soap. Imagine smelling the bread from 4 blocks away, through traffic exhaust and rain. That's closer to how we experience the world through scent. A deer's nose operates at a level that feels almost supernatural to us. The numbers tell part of the story. 297 million olfactory receptors line the nasal passages of a white-tailed deer. Each receptor is a specialized nerve ending designed to detect specific molecules floating through the air. When scent molecules enter the nose, they dissolve into the moist mucus coating and make contact with these receptors. The receptors translate chemical information into electrical signals. Those signals travel through nerves that penetrate the skull and connect directly to the olfactory bulb, a processing center in the brain dedicated entirely to analyzing smell. In deer, this bulb measures roughly 4 times larger than the equivalent structure in a human brain. More processing power, more capacity to distinguish between thousands of different odors simultaneously. But we need to understand what this really means in practical terms. When you open a bottle of perfume, the scent disperses into the surrounding air. Molecules drift outward, mixing with other odors, diluting as they spread. At some distance, the concentration becomes too low for your nose to detect. Maybe 20 feet, maybe 50 if the perfume is particularly strong. That same bottle, opened outdoors on a calm day, becomes detectable to a deer at distances exceeding half a mile, 800 yards, 1,000 in ideal conditions. The deer doesn't just smell something pleasant, it identifies specific chemical compounds, categorizes them, compares them against a lifetime catalogue of remembered scents, and determines whether they represent food, another deer, or danger. The detection happens through concentration gradients. Scent isn't uniform in space. It's stronger near the source and weaker as distance increases. A deer's brain analyzes these gradients constantly, processing how smell intensity changes across even tiny distances between the two nostrils. This provides directional information. The deer knows not just what it's smelling, but roughly where that smell originates. Imagine you're cooking soup. You can smell it from the kitchen, faintly from the living room, barely from the bedroom. Your brain uses these intensity differences to navigate toward the source without conscious thought. Deer do this continuously with every scent in their environment, building a three-dimensional smell map of everything within detection range. Wind changes everything. Scent molecules travel with air currents. A deer positioned downwind from a source receives a concentrated stream of scent particles. The same deer positioned upwind receives almost nothing. This isn't a limitation of the nose, it's physics. Molecules need a delivery mechanism, and wind provides that. Humidity affects detection dramatically. Water vapor in the air interacts with scent molecules, keeping them suspended longer and preventing rapid dispersion. On a humid morning, scents hang close to the ground, traveling farther and remaining concentrated. Deer detect odors more easily under these conditions. The molecules linger in place rather than dissipating upward. Dry air produces the opposite effect. Low humidity allows scent molecules to rise quickly and spread thin. The same odor that travels half a mile on a damp day might only reach 200 yards when the air is bone dry. Temperature interacts with humidity in complex ways. Cool, moist air in early morning creates optimal scenting conditions. The dense, damp atmosphere holds odor near ground level where deer nostrils are positioned. We should pause here and consider terrain. Dense forest breaks up wind patterns and creates pockets where scent accumulates. A deer walking through heavy timber might encounter your scent hours after you pass through. The molecules trapped in still air between the trees. Open fields allow scent to travel freely, dispersing it over greater distances but diluting concentration. The nasal structure itself contributes to detection efficiency. Deer have broad lateral nostrils that allow directional sampling. Each nostril pulls in air from a slightly different angle. The brain compares what each nostril detects, similar to how your two eyes create depth perception. This stereo smelling provides precise information about scent source location. Inside the nose, the surface area available for scent detection far exceeds what you'd expect from external appearance. The nasal passages contain complex folds of tissue called turbinates. These bony structures, covered in receptor-rich mucous membrane, increase the total surface area to multiple times what a smooth tube would provide. More surface area means more receptors exposed to incoming air. Air entering the nostrils doesn't flow straight through. It swirls and circulates around the turbinates, maximizing contact time between air and receptors. This ensures that even scent molecules present in very low concentrations get multiple chances to bind with appropriate receptors. Nothing gets missed. The brain processing deserves its own attention. Raw detection is one thing, making sense of the information is another. A deer's olfactory bulb receives input from millions of receptors simultaneously. It sorts this flood of data, identifying individual scents within complex mixtures, comparing them against memory, and triggering appropriate responses. The connections run directly to the limbic system, the primitive brain regions controlling emotion, memory, and instinct. Smell bypasses the thinking parts of the brain and connects straight to reflexive behavior. When a deer catches your scent, the response is immediate and unconscious. Recognition, classification as threat, flight response, all happening faster than deliberate thought. Young deer learn scent associations from their mothers and other herd members. A fawn doesn't instinctively know what humans smell like, but after experiencing its mother's alarm reaction to human odor several times, the association becomes permanent. That specific smell pattern gets filed in memory as danger. Future encounters trigger instant recognition. We also need to discuss the vomeronasal organ, a secondary scent detection system separate from the main nasal passages. This organ, sometimes called Jacobson's organ, sits in a small cavity just inside the nostrils. It specializes in detecting pheromones and other chemical signals specific to deer communication. When a buck investigates a scrape where other deer have urinated, he often exhibits a behavior called the Flehmen response. Head raised, upper lip curled back, nostrils flared. This posture draws air across the vomeronasal organ, allowing detailed analysis of pheromones left by other deer. The information extracted includes sex, reproductive status, dominance rank, and individual identity. The vomeronasal organ connects to different parts of the brain than regular smell does. Its neural pathways lead directly to regions controlling reproduction, aggression, and social behavior. This separation ensures that pheromone signals trigger specific behaviors without interference from regular environmental odors. Think about how you recognize a family member's home by its smell. Not consciously, maybe, but walk into your grandmother's house and that specific combination of cooking, soap, furniture, and air freshener registers instantly. You know where you are before you see anything. Deer live in that kind of smell world constantly, with far greater sensitivity and detail than we can imagine. Every footstep you take deposits scent. Skin cells shed continuously, bacteria on your skin produce odors, clothes washed in scented detergent carry those molecules, soap residue from your morning shower evaporates slowly from your skin all day, breath carries odors from your last meal. All of this creates a scent signature unique to you personally. When you walk through the woods, you leave an invisible trail of these molecules. They adhere to vegetation you brush against. They settle on the ground where you step. In humid conditions, this trail persists for hours, sometimes days. A deer crossing your path hours later detects this residual scent and knows a human passed through recently. The distance at which deer can detect various scents depends on what they're smelling. Food odors like fresh corn might be detectable from 200 to 400 yards. Other deer scents, particularly during breeding season, can register from similar distances. Human scent, marked in memory as dangerous, gets detected at the maximum range the nose is capable of. One aspect we haven't fully explored is the deer's ability to smell in layers. You smell coffee. A deer smells water temperature used for brewing, bean origin, roast level, cream fat content, sugar type. The nose separates complex odor mixtures into component parts and analyzes each one independently. This prevents masking. You can't hide one smell with another. The deer detects both. This fact matters more than most people realize. Covering human scent with other strong odors doesn't fool the nose. The deer smells the cover scent and the human scent. Both register, both get analyzed. The presence of an artificial cover scent might actually increase alarm because it signals someone trying to hide, which implies threat. Seasonal changes affect scenting conditions in predictable ways. Spring and fall, with their moderate temperatures and variable humidity, create generally good scenting conditions. Summer heat often reduces scenting effectiveness, as dry air and thermal currents disperse scent rapidly upward. Winter cold can suppress scent somewhat, though snow cover often holds molecules close to the surface where they remain concentrated. We should circle back the evolutionary pressure that created this system. Deer are prey animals. For millions of years, survival depended on detecting predators before those predators got close enough to strike. Eyes fail in darkness, ears can be fooled by silence, but scent persists. Scent lingers, scent travels on the wind and announces danger when nothing else does. The nose became the primary defense. Deer with better smell detection survived more often. They reproduced more successfully. The genes for enhanced olfactory capabilities spread through populations. Over countless generations, the system refined itself to its current remarkable state. The result is an animal that inhabits a world we cannot fully comprehend. Where we navigate primarily by sight, deer navigate by smell. Their environment is rich with invisible information we miss completely. They read histories written in scent trails. They detect approach from distances that seem impossible. They survive by trusting a sense that we barely use. When you understand this, when you truly grasp what 297 million receptors means in functional terms, you begin to appreciate why deer seem to possess an almost magical awareness. It's not magic, it's biology operating at exceptional efficiency. It's evolution's solution to the predator-prey relationship. It's a nose that turns the invisible into a survival tool more reliable than any other sense. Chapter 4. Autumn arrives gradually in deer habitat. September days still carry summer warmth, but nights grow longer. The angle of sunlight shifts lower on the horizon. These changes trigger responses in a deer's body that begin preparing for what's coming. The summer coat, thin and reddish-brown, served its purpose through the warm months. Short hairs, barely a quarter-inch deep in most places, allowed heat to escape easily from the skin. This kept the deer comfortable when temperatures climbed, but that same coat would be catastrophically inadequate once winter temperatures dropped below freezing. So the change begins. Not suddenly, not all at once. The process takes weeks, operating quietly beneath the visible surface. Hormones shift in response to changing day length. Skin follicles activate. new hair starts growing beneath the existing summer coat. Eventually, the old hairs loosen and fall away. The winter coat emerges in their place. The transformation is complete by late October in most regions. What replaces the summer coat looks similar at first glance: brown or grayish-brown hair covering the entire body. But examine it closely and the differences become obvious. The winter coat measures 5 to 6 times deeper than summer pelage. Where summer hair reached perhaps 1/5 of an inch, winter guard hairs extend well over an inch from the skin. The structure matters more than the length. Each individual guard hair grows hollow, not solid like human hair, hollow like a tiny straw with empty space running through the center of the shaft. This isn't an accident or a defect, it's engineered insulation operating on the same principle as double-pane windows or foam padding. Air trapped inside each hollow hair provides a barrier against heat transfer. Body warmth generated by the deer's metabolism tries to escape into the cold environment, but the air pockets slow that transfer dramatically. Heat moves efficiently through solid materials. It moves much slower through gases. The hollow structure forces warmth to cross multiple air barriers before reaching the outside environment. The guard hairs don't work alone. Beneath them lies a second layer of finer, softer hair. This undercoat grows incredibly dense, over 5,000 individual hairs per square inch of skin. These shorter hairs, sometimes called wool hairs, create another insulating layer close to the skin surface. Together, the two layers form a system. The dense undercoat traps warm air against the skin. The longer guard hairs create additional dead air space farther from the body. Cold air trying to reach the deer's skin must penetrate through multiple insulating zones. Each zone reduces temperature transfer. By the time outside cold reaches the skin, it's been moderated significantly. The color shift serves a purpose beyond camouflage. Darker hair absorbs solar radiation more efficiently than lighter colors. Even weak winter sunlight carries energy. The brownish-gray winter coat captures that energy and converts it to heat. This passive solar heating supplements the deer's internal heat production, reducing the calories needed to maintain body temperature. Think about how a black car interior heats up faster than a white one on a sunny day. The same physics applies to deer fur. Dark surfaces absorb light energy across a broader spectrum. That absorbed energy becomes heat. On a sunny winter afternoon, even when air temperature hovers around freezing, a deer's coat temperature can climb well above ambient. The oil coating adds another layer of protection. Sebaceous glands connected to each hair follicle produce an oily substance called sebum. This oil works its way along the hair shafts, coating them with a water-repellent layer. Snow landing on the guard hairs doesn't penetrate to the skin. It sits on the surface, eventually sliding off or evaporating without ever touching the insulating underlayers. This waterproofing becomes critical during wet snow or freezing rain events. Moisture soaking into the coat would collapse the air pockets and eliminate their insulating value. Wet fur conducts heat away from the body much faster than dry fur. The oil coating prevents saturation, maintaining the coat's effectiveness even in challenging conditions. You might see a deer standing motionless during a snowfall, white accumulation building steadily on its back. The snow doesn't melt, it piles up, sometimes several inches deep, because virtually no heat escapes through the coat to warm the surface. This demonstrates how effectively the hollow hair system retains body heat. The deer's internal temperature remains around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, but the outer surface of the coat stays cold enough that snow remains frozen. The metabolic efficiency involved here deserves attention. Maintaining body temperature in freezing conditions requires substantial energy. Every calorie spent on warmth is a calorie not available for other biological processes. The better the insulation, the fewer calories needed for temperature regulation. The hollow hair system reduces energy expenditure to levels that allow deer to survive extended periods with limited food access. Winter browse provides far fewer calories than summer vegetation. Twigs, bark, dried leaves, dormant buds. These offer minimal nutrition compared to fresh green growth. But deer can survive on this sparse diet partly because they're not burning excessive calories just to stay warm. The coat does much of that work passively, requiring no energy input beyond the initial investment of growing it. The coat's effectiveness varies with wind conditions. Still air allows the insulating layers to work optimally. Each air pocket remains stable, providing maximum thermal resistance. Wind disrupts this by forcing cold air through the guard hairs, mixing with the warm air trapped near the skin. This convective heat loss reduces insulation efficiency. Deer respond, behaviorally seeking shelter during windy conditions when possible. Dense evergreen cover provides wind protection while offering another benefit. The dark green needles absorb sunlight and radiate heat even on cold days. Deer bedding beneath cedar, spruce, or pine canopy experience slightly warmer microclimates than those in open areas. The combination of their coat insulation and this thermal cover creates comfortable resting spots even when ambient temperature drops well below zero. The coat requires maintenance. Deer groom themselves regularly, using their teeth to clean the hair and work the natural oils through the coat. This grooming removes debris, prevents matting, and maintains the fluffed structure necessary for optimal insulation. Matted hair loses its insulating value because the air pockets collapse. Seasonal timing of the coat change follows photoperiod rather than temperature. Day length triggers hormonal changes that initiate new hair growth. And this means the winter coat develops before winter actually arrives. A deer in early October may be growing a full winter coat while temperatures still reach into the 70s. The coat will be ready when needed rather than developing in response to cold that's already arrived. The spring transition reverses the process. As days lengthen in March and April, the winter coat begins shedding. This molting typically starts on the head and progresses backward, with the hindquarters being the last areas to shed. Deer during this transition often look patchy and ragged as clumps of winter hair fall away to reveal the new summer coat growing beneath. The timing seems almost wasteful in early spring, when cold weather often persists into April or even May. But the photoperiod trigger operates on averages across evolutionary time. Most years, the coat change aligns reasonably well with temperature patterns. Occasionally, late cold snaps catch deer with partially shed coats. They tolerate this discomfort because the alternative, waiting until temperature-based triggers, would delay summer coat development and cause overheating later. The weight of a fully developed winter coat on an adult deer reaches nearly 3 pounds of hair. That represents an enormous number of individual hairs, each one hollow, each one contributing to the overall insulation system. The energy investment required to grow this much hair is substantial, but the return on that investment makes winter survival possible. Different deer populations show variation in coat development based on regional climate. Deer in the northern parts of the range grow thicker, deeper coats than deer in southern regions. The genetic programming responds to local conditions across generations. Northern deer need superior insulation to survive temperatures that might drop to 40 below zero. Southern deer face milder winters and develop correspondingly lighter winter coats. The coat also affects behavior in subtle ways. A deer with an efficient coat can afford to remain still for longer periods during cold weather. Movement generates heat, but it also requires burning calories. A well-insulated deer can conserve energy by remaining bedded through long winter days, only moving when necessary to feed. The coat makes this energy-saving strategy viable. Fawns born in late spring grow their first winter coat that same autumn. This coat won't be as thick or extensive as an adult's, but it provides enough insulation for the fawn to survive its first winter. The coat development represents a critical milestone in the fawn's maturation. Without adequate winter coat growth, survival probability drops dramatically. The hollow hair technology isn't unique to deer. Many cold-adapted mammals use similar strategies. Polar bears, caribou, wolves all rely on hollow guard hairs for insulation. But deer have refined the system particularly well, allowing them to thrive in environments where winter temperatures routinely drop below zero and remain there for months. The system works so efficiently that deer can survive extended periods of extreme cold without seeking shelter beyond basic wind protection. The coat provides sufficient insulation that they can bed directly on snow without significant heat loss to the ground. Their curled resting position minimizes exposed surface area, and the coat thickness prevents cold transfer from below. As winter deepens and snow accumulates, the coat continues performing. Fresh snow may pile up during storms. The deer shakes it off periodically, preventing excessive weight from building up. But between these shaking episodes, snow sits undisturbed on the back, proof that the insulation beneath is working exactly as designed. Chapter 5. Winter settles slowly over the landscape. The days grow shorter, week by week. Light fades earlier each afternoon. Mornings arrive later. The change happens gradually enough that you barely notice it day to day, but compare November to August and the difference becomes clear. Deer notice these changes too. Their bodies respond to shifting day length in ways that happen beneath the surface, invisible but profound. As autumn progresses toward winter, internal processes begin adjusting. Hormones shift, chemical signals move through the bloodstream. The body prepares for what's coming. We've talked about the winter coat, about how hollow hairs trap warmth. But insulation alone doesn't solve the winter survival problem. A deer still needs energy to maintain body temperature. That energy comes from food, and winter food offers far less nutrition than summer vegetation. The numbers tell a difficult story. A deer in summer might consume enough calories to maintain body weight easily. Fresh green leaves, tender shoots, protein-rich forbs. The landscape provides abundance, but winter changes everything. Woody browse, dried leaves, bark from trees. These contain minimal nutrition. A deer could eat all day and still struggle to replace the calories it burns. So the body makes an adjustment. It slows down, not in an obvious way. A deer in winter still moves, still feeds, still maintains awareness of its surroundings, but internally metabolic processes begin operating at reduced capacity. Energy consumption drops, the body finds ways to do more with less. Heart rate provides a measurable indicator of this change. In spring and summer, a resting deer's heart beats around 65 times per minute, steady, consistent, supporting an active metabolism. But as winter deepens, that rate decreases 40 beats per minute, sometimes even lower. The heart continues its work, circulating blood, delivering oxygen, but it does so more slowly, more economically. This isn't because the deer is sick or weak, it's a deliberate physiological adjustment. The body recognizes that winter has arrived, that food has become scarce, that energy conservation matters more than anything else. So it downregulates, it finds a lower gear and settles into it. The fascinating part is that this happens regardless of food availability. Researchers studying red deer in Europe provided some animals with abundant, high-quality food throughout the winter. These deer had no nutritional stress. They could eat as much as they wanted, yet their heart rates still dropped to 40 beats per minute, matching deer on restricted diets. This suggests the slowdown is programmed into the animal's biology. Day length triggers it, not hunger. The body doesn't wait until food becomes scarce to start conserving energy. It anticipates winter based on environmental cues and prepares accordingly. Body temperature follows a similar pattern, not the core temperature, which remains stable, but peripheral temperature in the legs, ears, and extremities. These areas cool down significantly. Blood flow to the periphery decreases. The body prioritizes keeping vital organs warm and allows the outer regions to run cooler. This might sound uncomfortable, but it serves an important purpose. Maintaining temperature in the extremities requires constant energy expenditure. By allowing those areas to cool somewhat, the deer reduces its total energy needs. The legs still function, the ears still hear, but they operate at lower temperatures, requiring less metabolic support. Rumen temperature also decreases slightly during winter. The rumen is the largest chamber in a deer's complex stomach system, where plant material ferments and breaks down. This fermentation process generates heat as a byproduct. In summer, that heat helps maintain body temperature. In winter, the deer benefits from allowing rumen temperature to drop a degree or two. Less heat production means less food needed to fuel the process. All of these changes work together: slower heart rate, reduced peripheral blood flow, slightly lower rumen temperature. Each adjustment saves a small amount of energy. Combined, they reduce the deer's total caloric needs by a substantial percentage. Some estimates suggest metabolism drops by 50% or more compared to summer levels. This means a deer can survive on half the food it would normally require. When winter browse provides perhaps 30 or 40% of summer nutrition levels, that metabolic slowdown makes the difference between survival and starvation. Movement patterns change accordingly. Summer deer are active, moving frequently between feeding areas, exploring their range, maintaining social connections. Winter deer become conservative. They move less. They bed for longer periods. They choose the shortest routes between feeding and resting areas. This behavioral shift reinforces the physiological changes. Less movement means less energy burned. A deer that beds for 20 hours out of 24 conserves far more energy than one that remains active. During severe weather, deer might stay bedded for days, only rising when absolutely necessary to feed. The bedding locations themselves are chosen carefully. South-facing slopes receive more sunlight. The ground warms slightly even on cold days. Conifer stands provide wind protection and trap heat from the sun. These thermal advantages reduce the energy needed to maintain body temperature. A deer bedded in optimal cover might save 20 or 30% of its energy budget compared to one exposed to wind and cold. Think about how you feel on a lazy Sunday afternoon. Relaxed, still, metabolism idling. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows, your body enters a restful state where energy consumption minimizes. Deer in winter exist in something approaching that state continuously. It's not true hibernation. They remain aware, capable of instant response to threats, but their baseline energy expenditure settles to the minimum level compatible with staying alive. Fat reserves accumulated during autumn become crucial. These stored calories supplement whatever food the deer can find during winter. A healthy deer entering winter might carry 20 or 30 pounds of fat. That represents several weeks of emergency energy supply. The body metabolizes this fat slowly, making it last as long as possible. But fat reserves alone can't sustain a deer indefinitely. Even with drastically reduced metabolism, the body still needs some food intake. Browse consumption continues throughout winter, though at reduced levels compared to summer feeding. The woody material provides minimal nutrition, but it keeps the digestive system functioning and provides some caloric input. The quality of this browse matters enormously. Evergreen plants like cedar provide better nutrition than dormant hardwood twigs. Areas with diverse browse species support healthier deer than monoculture stands. Land managers who maintain varied winter habitat give deer better survival odds by providing multiple food options. Snow depth complicates everything. A deer can move easily through 6 inches of snow. 12 inches starts requiring more energy to push through. 18 inches forces the deer to expend significant calories just moving from one location to another. Deep snow effectively locks deer in place, confining them to areas where they've already packed down trails. This is when the metabolic slowdown becomes most critical. A deer trapped by deep snow, unable to move freely, must survive on whatever browse exists within its restricted range. The slower metabolism extends the time its fat reserves last. A week of immobility that would kill an animal at summer metabolic rates becomes survivable at winter rates. The timing of spring green up determines how well this strategy works. If nutritious vegetation appears in March, deer have weathered winter successfully. But if spring delays until May, the extended period of nutritional stress can be fatal. Deer emerge from winter having lost 25 or 30% of their body weight. They need fresh growth to begin recovering. The metabolic adjustment reverses as day length increases. Heart rates climb back towards summer levels. Body temperature in the periphery returns to normal. Rumen activity increases. The body recognizes that winter is ending and shifts back into a higher operational mode. This transition takes several weeks. The body doesn't simply flip a switch. Metabolic processes gradually accelerate. As green vegetation becomes available, the increased nutrition supports the rising energy demands. The system calibrates itself to match environmental conditions. Young deer and pregnant does face particular challenges during this period. Fawns have smaller fat reserves and higher surface area to mass ratios, meaning they lose heat faster. Pregnant does must support developing fetuses while still recovering from winter's deprivations. Both groups benefit greatly from early spring vegetation. Older deer, if they've maintained good body condition, often weather winter better than younger animals. Their larger body size provides better heat retention. They've learned through experience where to find the best winter habitat and browse. Survival rates generally increase with age, at least until senescence begins reducing body condition. The metabolic slowdown represents an elegant solution to an impossible problem. Winter in the northern range of white-tailed deer habitat is brutally difficult. Temperatures drop below zero. Snow covers the ground for months. Nutritious food essentially disappears. No animal could maintain summer metabolic rates under these conditions. By down-regulating metabolism, by running all systems at reduced capacity, deer thread the needle between energy requirements and food availability. They enter a state that's not quite hibernation, but far removed from summer activity levels. They persist, they endure, they wait for spring. The heart beats 40 times per minute instead of 65. That simple change, multiplied by millions of heartbeats over 4 months of winter, saves enormous amounts of energy. The difference between 40 and 65 beats per minute is the difference between survival and death for many deer. Think of it as an extended rest. The body settling into the slowest sustainable rhythm. Everything still functions but at minimum power, like a house where you've turned the thermostat down to save on heating bills. You're still comfortable, but you're not wasting energy maintaining unnecessary warmth. Deer have perfected this over thousands of generations. The ones who couldn't slow their metabolism didn't survive winters. The ones who could pass that capability to their offspring. Now every deer carries this winter survival program in its biology. When day length shortens past a certain threshold, the program activates automatically. And when spring finally arrives, when new growth appears and warmth returns, the body reverses course just as smoothly. Metabolism accelerates, energy returns, the deer emerge from winter's constraints and resume their normal rhythms. Chapter 6. Morning arrives slowly in deer habitat. Darkness doesn't disappear all at once. It fades gradually, the sky lightening from black to deep blue to pale grey. Stars dim, the horizon brightens, and somewhere in that transition between night and day, deer begin to move, not all at once, not suddenly. One deer stands from its bed, then another. Slowly, quietly, they stretch and begin walking. The movement happens in the half-light, when shadows still pool beneath trees and visibility remains limited. This timing isn't random, it's deliberate, chosen, refined over countless generations. Dawn offers certain advantages. The air is cool, temperatures haven't risen yet. Dew settles on vegetation, making plants easier to digest. And perhaps most importantly, light levels allow deer to see but remain difficult to see. Predators struggle with visibility during these twilight hours. Deer can move with relative safety. The first activity of the day involves feeding. Deer that bedded down 12 hours earlier need calories. Their digestive system has processed the previous evening's food. Stomachs are empty or nearly so. The body requires fuel. So they walk to areas where food grows. These aren't long journeys usually. Perhaps 100 yards, maybe 200. Deer prefer bedding areas located near good feeding spots. The shorter the distance between bed and food, the less energy spent traveling. Energy conservation matters. Every calorie burned walking is a calorie unavailable for other needs. The morning feed lasts an hour, sometimes two. Deer graze steadily, moving from plant to plant, selecting preferred species. They browse quietly. There's no urgency in their movements. They're simply eating, filling their stomachs, taking in nutrients. The rhythm is calm, unhurried, peaceful. As the sun rises higher, as light increases and temperatures begin climbing, feeding activity slows. Deer have consumed enough for now. Their stomachs are full. It's time to find somewhere safe to rest and digest. They walk back toward cover, sometimes to the same bedding area they left earlier, sometimes to a different spot. The location matters less than the characteristics. Good bedding areas offer visibility. A deer wants to see approaching danger. They also provide escape routes, multiple paths leading away in different directions. And they tend to be elevated slightly, allowing air currents to carry scent upward from below. Deer settle into their beds. They don't simply lie down anywhere. They choose specific spots, often using the same locations repeatedly. The ground gets worn down from repeated use. Oval depressions form in the earth, shaped by the deer's body over days and weeks of occupation. Once bedded, deer enter a rest period. They're not sleeping deeply. They remain alert, ears rotating, nose testing the wind. But they're not active either. They simply exist, lying quietly, conserving energy. This rest serves multiple purposes. Primarily, it allows digestion. Deer are ruminants. They have complex four-chambered stomachs that ferment plant material. This fermentation takes time. The deer must remain relatively still while it happens. So they bed down and let their digestive system work. Hours pass this way. The sun climbs higher. Morning becomes midday. Temperatures rise. Deer continue resting. Occasionally one might stand, turn around, and bed down facing a different direction, or move a few feet to a shadier spot. But mostly they stay put, quiet and still. Around midday, something shifts. Not dramatically, but deer that have been bedded for several hours begin showing signs of activity. One stands, stretches, urinates, maybe browses on vegetation within a few feet of the bedding area, then beds down again. This midday stirring represents a brief feeding period, not a major one. Deer aren't walking to distant food sources. They're simply nibbling on whatever grows near their beds. A few bites here, a few there, enough to add some calories without expending energy on travel. The midday period also involves rumination. Deer bring up partially digested food from their stomach and chew it again. This cud chewing looks mechanical, rhythmic. The jaw moves steadily, processing the material more thoroughly before swallowing it again. Hours can pass with a deer simply lying in its bed, chewing cud, existing in a state of calm rest. Afternoon settles over the landscape. Temperatures peak. This is typically the quietest part of the deer's day. Activity drops to minimal levels. Most deer remain bedded. Movement reduces to almost nothing. The forest or field falls into a drowsy stillness. This inactivity isn't laziness, it's strategy. Moving during peak heat wastes energy. The body must work harder to cool itself. Better to remain still, to rest in shade, to wait for temperatures to drop. Deer have learned this through evolution. The ones who moved constantly during hot afternoons burned unnecessary calories and survived less often. As afternoon progresses toward evening, as shadows begin lengthening and air temperature starts dropping, deer begin stirring again. This evening movement mirrors the morning pattern but in reverse. Deer stand from their beds, they stretch, they begin walking toward feeding areas. Evening feeding represents the most significant meal of the day for many deer. They spend more time feeding in the evening than at any other period. Several factors contribute to this. Night is coming. Darkness will make feeding more difficult. So deer maximize food intake while light remains available. Evening temperatures also favor activity. The heat of day has passed. Cool air makes movement comfortable. Deer can feed actively without overheating. They graze steadily, moving across feeding areas, consuming substantial quantities of vegetation. This evening feed might last 2 hours, sometimes 3. Deer aren't rushed. They move slowly through their feeding area, selecting plants carefully. Preferred species get eaten first. Less desirable options get consumed later, if at all. The selection process reflects learned preferences developed over time. As darkness falls, feeding continues but changes character. Deer move more cautiously in full darkness. They rely more heavily on smell and hearing than vision. Their movements become more deliberate, more careful, but they continue eating, continue taking in calories. Night represents another active period for deer. Many people think deer sleep through the night. They don't. Deer are crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk, but they don't simply shut down between those periods. Nighttime involves continued feeding, interspersed with rest periods. A deer might feed for 2 hours after dark, then bed down for several hours, then stand and feed again before dawn. This pattern of intermittent activity continues through the night. The deer operates on a cycle of feed, rest, cycling through the hours of darkness. These nighttime feeding periods allow deer to access food sources they might avoid during daylight. Open fields, for instance. Deer often feel safer feeding in open areas after dark, when reduced visibility offers protection from predators. They emerge from cover, graze in exposed locations, then retreat before dawn. The entire daily pattern revolves around energy management. Deer must consume enough calories to maintain body functions while minimizing energy expenditure. This requires careful balance. Too much movement burns excess calories. Too little feeding results in insufficient intake. The pattern deer follow represents an evolved solution to this challenge. Distance between bedding and feeding areas affects this balance significantly. Deer with nearby food sources can minimize travel. They spend less energy moving and more time feeding or resting. Deer forced to travel long distances between bed and food burn more calories and face increased predation risk during travel. Season affects the pattern somewhat. Summer deer have abundant food and can afford to be selective. Winter deer must feed more actively to find sufficient nutrition in scarce browse, but the basic rhythm remains consistent. Dawn feeding, midday rest, evening feeding, nighttime feeding cycles. This pattern persists year-round with variations in intensity and duration. Weather introduces short-term changes. Heavy rain might keep deer bedded longer. Extreme cold might increase feeding frequency. Wind affects where deer choose to bed and feed, as they prefer positions allowing scent detection. But once weather stabilizes, the standard pattern resumes. The daily cycle also reflects predator avoidance strategies. By being most active during twilight and darkness, deer reduce encounters with diurnal predators. Crepuscular activity patterns offer a compromise between visibility needs and safety concerns, enough light to see, not enough for predators to spot them easily. Bedding location selection shows remarkable consistency. Individual deer often use the same bedding areas for extended periods. They know these locations intimately. They've memorized every escape route, every sight line, every wind pattern. This familiarity provides security. In an emergency, the deer doesn't need to think. It simply reacts, following known paths to safety. Feeding areas show more variation. Deer rotate between multiple food sources depending on what's currently available. Spring provides different options than summer. Fall offers mast crops. Winter limits choices to woody browse and evergreen vegetation. Deer adapt their feeding locations to match seasonal availability. Throughout all of this, the underlying principle remains constant. Maximize calorie intake, minimize energy expenditure, rest when possible, feed when necessary, move carefully, choose safe locations, remain alert, survive. The daily budget balances out over 24 hours. Calories consumed versus calories burned. Time spent feeding versus time resting. Energy allocated to movement versus energy conserved through stillness. Deer that manage this budget effectively survive and reproduce. Deer that miscalculate face reduced survival odds. This budget operates automatically, governed by instinct and learned behavior. A deer doesn't consciously calculate energy expenditure. It simply follows patterns that feel right, patterns programmed into its biology through generations of selection pressure. The deer that survived had efficient daily patterns. The ones that didn't died without passing their genes forward. So we see deer moving at dawn, resting through midday, feeding at evening, cycling through the night. The pattern repeats daily, week after week, month after month, consistent, predictable, efficient, a rhythm refined over countless generations into a survival strategy that works. Chapter 7. Water exists in many forms across deer habitat. Small streams trickle through forests, creeks wind between hills, rivers flow steadily toward distant oceans, lakes spread across the landscape, their surfaces reflecting sky and clouds, and sometimes deer encounter these water bodies and must make a decision. The decision usually involves crossing. A deer standing at the water's edge can see something on the opposite shore, food perhaps, or simply new territory. The water stretches between here and there. Shallow water presents no obstacle. A deer simply walks through, legs pushing against the current, body staying mostly dry. But deeper water changes things. When water depth exceeds a deer's height, walking becomes impossible. The deer's hooves no longer touch bottom. The body must float. Movement must come from swimming. And deer can swim. They don't announce this ability. There's no preparation, no warm-up. A deer reaches deep water and simply begins swimming. The transition happens smoothly. Walking becomes swimming without pause or hesitation. The body knows what to do. The mechanics are straightforward. Legs that normally push against ground now push against water. The same basic motion repeated steadily. Front legs and back legs working together, propelling the body forward. The head stays above water. Nose and eyes remain dry. But the rest of the body submerges. That coat we discussed earlier serves another purpose in water. The hollow guard hairs trap air. Not just for warmth anymore. The trapped air provides buoyancy. The deer floats higher in the water than you might expect. Perhaps a third of the body remains above the surface. This reduces drag. Less of the deer pushes through water resistance. Swimming becomes more efficient. The undercoat provides insulation even when wet. Water temperature often runs colder than air temperature. A deer swimming for extended periods needs protection from heat loss. The dense underlayer helps maintain core temperature. The deer can swim longer without experiencing dangerous cooling. Deer have large lungs. Relative to their body size, these lungs hold substantial air volume. The expanded chest cavity helps with flotation. More importantly, the lung capacity supports sustained physical effort. Swimming requires continuous work. The legs never stop moving. The body needs oxygen. Those large lungs deliver it. Researchers have documented deer swimming remarkable distances. Studies using GPS collars tracked individual deer crossing rivers and lakes. One study recorded bucks swimming the Mississippi River. The distances ranged from just under a mile to over 2 miles, a single, continuous swim from one bank to the other. Think about that for a moment. 2.5 miles of swimming, no rest breaks, no standing, just steady, continuous leg motion pushing through water for perhaps an hour or more. The stamina required is substantial, yet deer accomplish this without apparent difficulty. Lakes present similar challenges. A deer might need to reach an island or simply wants to explore the opposite shore. The water might be half a mile wide, maybe more. The deer enters the water and swims. Minutes pass, then more minutes. The deer continues, legs working steadily, head above water, making slow progress across the open surface. From a boat, watching a swimming deer appears almost surreal. The head seems disconnected from a body you can't see beneath the surface. Just a deer head, moving slowly but steadily across the water. No visible means of propulsion, just quiet, persistent movement. The swimming speed is moderate, perhaps 15 miles per hour at maximum effort. Usually slower. Swimming takes more energy than walking. Deer conserve strength by maintaining a sustainable pace. They're not racing, they're simply getting from one side to another. Speed matters less than endurance. Ocean sightings occur occasionally. Fishermen report seeing deer swimming far from shore, miles out. The deer presumably entered the water somewhere along the coast and just kept swimming, perhaps searching for offshore islands, perhaps simply disoriented. Either way, the deer swims. These ocean journeys carry more risk. Ocean water is colder than lake water typically. Waves create additional resistance. Currents can push the deer off course, and the distances involved might exceed even a deer's considerable swimming capacity. But the deer tries. The instinct to swim, to cross water, operates regardless of the specific water body. Young deer can swim too. Fawns take to water if necessary, but they have less stamina than adults. A fawn might manage a few hundred yards before becoming exhausted. Adults can swim for miles. This difference matters when families cross water together. The adult sets the pace. The fawn must keep up or risk separation. Water depth doesn't intimidate deer particularly. Whether the water is 5 feet deep or 50 feet makes little difference to a swimming deer. Once the deer can't touch bottom, depth becomes irrelevant. The deer simply swims across whatever depth exists beneath it. Current presents more challenge than depth. Still water allows the deer to swim straight across. Moving water pushes the deer downstream while it swims. The deer must angle upstream somewhat to compensate. This lengthens the crossing distance. The deer ends up swimming farther than the straight line width of the river. Strong currents can defeat a deer. The water moves faster than the deer can swim. The deer makes forward progress but gets carried downstream continuously. Eventually, the deer might reach the far shore but miles downstream from where it entered, or the deer might exhaust itself and drown. Current matters. Deer prefer crossing at certain locations, narrow spots where the distance is shorter, shallow areas where they can walk most of the way, places with gentle banks for easy exit. They learn these crossing points through experience and use them repeatedly. Trails leading to water often indicate established crossing sites. The motivations for crossing vary. Sometimes food exists on the far side, an agricultural field perhaps, or a stand of oak trees dropping acorns. The deer can see or smell the food across the water. Swimming becomes worthwhile despite the effort and risk involved. Sometimes the crossing relates to escape, a predator or perceived threat on one side of the water. The deer flees into the water and swims away. Many predators can also swim, but deer swim faster than bears or wolves. Water provides escape opportunity that running might not. Pregnant does sometimes swim to islands. The isolation offers safety for birthing. Predators are less likely to reach an island location. The doe swims across while pregnant, gives birth on the island and stays there until the fawns grow strong enough to swim back. Swampy areas attract deer for multiple reasons. Dense vegetation provides cover. Soft ground makes it difficult for predators to approach quietly. Water offers quick escape routes. Deer feel comfortable in swampy terrain partly because they handle water well. Seasonal patterns exist in swimming behavior. Summer deer seem more willing to enter water. Temperature is warm. The water feels refreshing rather than uncomfortable. Winter deer avoid swimming when possible. Cold water poses hypothermia risk. Ice adds another complication. Thin ice bothers deer particularly. Too thin to support their weight but thick enough to cut skin. A deer breaking through thin ice repeatedly while trying to cross suffers injury and exhaustion. Solid ice presents less problem. The deer can walk across if the ice holds, but that transitional period when ice is forming or melting creates dangerous conditions. Despite their swimming ability, deer prefer to stay dry. They swim when necessary, not recreationally. A deer won't enter water just for enjoyment. It enters water to cross to somewhere else. Once across, the deer exits and shakes off. Swimming serves a purpose. It's not play. The shaking behavior after swimming is thorough. The deer shivers its entire body, starting from the head and moving backward. Water flies off in all directions. This removes much of the moisture from the coat. The remaining dampness dries gradually through evaporation and body heat. Even after shaking, a wet deer looks different from a dry one. The coat lies flatter, the deer appears smaller, more streamlined. Colors appear darker when wet. As the coat dries and fluffs back up, the deer regains its normal appearance. Rivers running through deer habitat create predictable movement patterns. Deer on one side need to access resources on the other. They cross at established points, creating trails on both banks. These crossing patterns remain stable over years. The same locations get used repeatedly. Large lakes can effectively divide deer populations. If the distance exceeds normal swimming range, deer on opposite shores might rarely interact. The water becomes a barrier, separating what would otherwise be a continuous population into distinct groups. But some deer do make those long crossings. A young buck dispersing from his birth area might swim across a large lake to reach new territory. The journey might take over an hour of continuous swimming, but the reward is unoccupied habitat on the far shore. Island populations of deer typically originated from swimming colonists. Deer reached the island by swimming from the mainland. The island offered sufficient resources to support a population. Generations later, deer still live there, descendants of those original swimmers. These island deer sometimes swim back to the mainland. Movement goes both ways. The water isn't a perfect barrier, it's simply a zone that requires swimming to cross. Deer willing to swim can move between island and mainland as needed. The swimming ability gives deer access to places predators cannot reach easily. An island in the middle of a lake offers safety that mainland habitat doesn't provide. The doe raising fawns on an island knows that wolves or coyotes are unlikely to arrive unexpectedly. Water, then, becomes part of the deer's habitat in a way we might not initially recognize, not just for drinking, not merely an obstacle to cross, but an element the deer can navigate, can use strategically, can incorporate into its movement patterns and survival strategies. The quiet deer head moving across calm water, legs working beneath the surface. Progress measured in steady, unhurried strokes. Distance covered gradually, patiently. The far shore getting closer. Eventually hooves touching bottom again. The deer walks up onto dry land, pauses, shakes off the water, and continues on its way. The ears of a deer rest on the sides of its head. Large ears, much larger than you might expect. They sit there, curved slightly, shaped like shallow cups. And they move. Not all the time, but frequently. Small adjustments, constant shifts in position. The ears rotate, tracking sounds across the landscape. Each ear works, independently from the other. One ear might point forward while the other aims to the side, or one tilts back while its partner scans ahead. The muscles controlling these movements operate continuously, making tiny corrections based on what the deer hears or doesn't hear. This independent movement creates something like a scanning system. The deer doesn't need to turn its entire head to monitor different directions. The ears swivel, sampling the soundscape from multiple angles simultaneously. Information flows in from left and right, from front and behind. The brain processes it all, building a map of the auditory environment. The size of the ears matters. Large surface area catches more sound waves. Think of them as collectors, gathering vibrations from the air and funneling them inward toward the inner ear structures that actually detect sound. Bigger collectors mean more efficient gathering. The deer hears things that smaller ears would miss entirely. The shape contributes too. That cupped structure focuses sound waves, concentrating them toward the ear canal. Natural amplification provided by simple geometry. The curve of the ear acts like a reflector, bouncing sound inward rather than letting it scatter. But the deer isn't just collecting sound randomly, it's listening for specific things. Footsteps, breaking twigs, rustling leaves, any sound that might indicate movement. Any sound that doesn't fit the normal background noise of the forest or field. Deer spend their entire lives in the same general area. They know what that place sounds like. The wind through trees makes a certain sound. Birds create familiar patterns. Rain has its own acoustic signature. Snow falling sounds different from rain. All these sounds become catalogued, filed away as normal, expected, safe. Then something different happens, a sound that doesn't match the catalogue. Maybe it's louder than it should be. Maybe the frequency is wrong. Maybe it occurs at an unexpected time or from an unusual direction. The deer's brain flags it immediately. Unknown sound, potentially dangerous. Pay attention. The ear nearest that sound rotates toward it. The other ear might continue scanning elsewhere, or it might also turn toward the source. Depends on how concerning the sound seems. A small, quiet noise gets one ear. A loud, sustained sound gets both ears locked on target. Once both ears point the same direction, the deer can determine location with remarkable precision. Sound reaches one ear slightly before it reaches the other. That tiny time difference tells the brain which direction the sound came from. The brain calculates angles, distances, locations, all happening automatically, faster than conscious thought. The frequency range deer can hear extends beyond human capability. We max out around 20,000 Hz. Deer continue hearing well past that, up to 30,000 Hz or higher. This means certain sounds exist that deer detect, but humans cannot. High-pitched sounds, ultrasonic frequencies, the deer hears them clearly while we remain completely unaware they're happening, but most of the time, deer focus on middle frequencies, 4,000 to 8,000 Hz. This is where deer vocalizations occur, grunts, bleats, snorts. All the sounds deer make to communicate with each other fall into this range. So the deer's hearing is most sensitive, precisely where it needs to be for understanding other deer. The soundscape fills with information constantly. Wind moving through vegetation, water flowing over rocks, insects buzzing, birds calling, small animals rustling through leaf litter. All of this creates a complex background of noise. And somewhere within that background, a deer must detect the specific sounds that matter. The ability to filter helps enormously. Deer brains can focus on relevant sounds while ignoring irrelevant ones. Similar to how you can pick out a friend's voice in a crowded room. Lots of sound happening all around you, but you tune most of it out and concentrate on the one voice you want to hear. Deer do this continuously with environmental sounds. A squirrel running across dry leaves creates a particular pattern, quick, light, erratic. The deer hears it, categorizes it as squirrel, dismisses it as non-threatening, but larger footsteps, heavier, more regular, moving steadily in one direction. That pattern doesn't match squirrel. The deer pays attention. Weather affects how well sound travels. Still air allows sound to carry cleanly. The deer hears things from farther away on calm days. Wind disrupts sound transmission. It creates its own noise rustling through trees and grass, and it pushes sound in certain directions while blocking it in others. A deer, downwind from a sound source, hears it clearly. Upwind, the sound might not arrive at all. Rain adds another layer of acoustic interference, millions of raindrops hitting leaves, ground, water. The collective noise drowns out quieter sounds. During heavy rain, deer rely less on hearing and more on their other senses. The auditory channel becomes too cluttered with rain noise to provide useful information. Temperature inversions can create interesting effects. Cool air near the ground, warm air above. Sound bends as it moves through these temperature layers, sometimes traveling farther than it would under normal conditions. A deer might hear something from an unexpected distance on certain mornings when atmospheric conditions align just right. The ears themselves require maintenance. Deer clean them through grooming behaviors. They might rub an ear against a front leg or shake their head, flapping the ears. This dislodges dirt, removes parasites, keeps the structures functioning properly. Clean ears work better than dirty ones. Seasonal changes bring different soundscapes. Spring mornings fill with bird songs, breeding calls, territorial declarations, constant vocalization. Summer brings insect sounds, cicadas, crickets, countless small creatures producing their various noises. Autumn sees migration, with different bird species passing through. Winter often becomes quieter overall. Less biological activity means less sound. Throughout all these seasonal variations, the deer continues monitoring, listening, processing. The ears rotate slowly, sweeping across the auditory field. Sometimes both ears point the same direction, focused on something specific. Other times, they work independently, each tracking different sound sources simultaneously. A bedded deer resting through the midday hours keeps its ears active. The body might be still, conserving energy, but the ears continue their scanning routine. Rotate, pause, rotate again. Checking left, checking right, checking behind. Always listening for anything that might require a response. The muscular control allowing this independent movement involves numerous small muscles attached to the base of each ear. These muscles can pull the ear in different directions, rotating it through a wide arc. Nearly 180 degrees of movement, from pointing straight forward to pointing almost straight back, and any angle in between. This range of motion, combined with the independent control, gives the deer something approaching full circle auditory coverage. There's nowhere a sound can come from that the deer cannot point an ear toward it. Unlike animals with fixed ears, deer can monitor their entire surroundings without moving their head or body. Young deer learn to use their ears effectively through experience. Fawns start with the basic hardware, the ears and muscles that control them. But interpreting what they hear takes practice. Following their mother, watching how she responds to different sounds, the fawn gradually builds an understanding of which sounds matter and which don't. By their first autumn, fawns have developed reasonable competence at auditory monitoring. They won't match adult deer in experience or judgment, but they understand the basics. Strange sounds mean possible danger. Familiar sounds are safe. Certain patterns require immediate response. As deer age, their hearing remains relatively stable. Unlike humans, who often lose high-frequency hearing as they get older, deer maintain their auditory capability throughout their lives. A young deer and an old deer hear roughly the same frequency range with similar sensitivity. The older deer has more experience interpreting what it hears, but the basic hearing ability doesn't decline. This consistent auditory performance matters for survival. A deer cannot afford to lose hearing as it ages. That would leave it vulnerable, unable to detect approaching danger. So the ears continue working year after year, performing the same function with the same effectiveness. The integration of hearing with the deer's other senses creates a complete awareness system. The ears provide information that the eyes and nose cannot. Sound travels around obstacles. You can hear something you cannot see. You can hear things from directions where scent won't reach you. The three senses complement each other, each filling gaps the others leave. A deer might hear a sound, then turn to look in that direction, or smell something and rotate its ears toward where the scent came from, listening for confirming sounds. The senses work together, cross-checking, validating, building a comprehensive understanding of the environment. Night brings special challenges. Vision becomes limited. Scent still works, but the deer can't see what's approaching. Hearing becomes proportionally more important during darkness. The ears work overtime, scanning, listening, monitoring. The deer relies heavily on auditory information to maintain awareness when it cannot see. Moonlight helps somewhat. Brighter nights allow some vision, but even on moonlit nights, the deer depends on its ears more than its eyes. Sound reveals what remains hidden in shadows. The deer beds down, ears rotating slowly, tracking the night sounds, waiting for dawn. Morning eventually arrives, light returns, the deer can see again. But the ears continue their work, never stopping, never resting. Because sound provides information that vision cannot. The two senses operate continuously, feeding data to the brain, keeping the deer informed, keeping it alive. The system is simple in concept but sophisticated in execution. Large, movable ears, independent muscular control, sensitive inner ear structures, neural processing that filters and interprets, all working together seamlessly, automatically, reliably. The deer doesn't think about listening, it just listens. The ears do what ears are supposed to do, and the deer hears what it needs to hear when it needs to hear it. Chapter 9. Spring arrives, and with it come the fawns. Small creatures newly born, lying quietly in tall grass or beneath low branches. Their coats are reddish-brown, soft, covered with white spots. Roughly 300 spots scattered across the back, the sides, the flanks. Each spot is small, perhaps half an inch across. They form patterns along the spine, clusters on the body. The spots serve a purpose. Sunlight filters through leaves overhead, creating patches of light and shadow on the forest floor. The fawn lies still. The white spots break up the outline of its body. A predator looking at the forest floor sees dappled light. The fawn blends into that pattern. It becomes difficult to see. The camouflage works through stillness and pattern. Days pass slowly for the fawn. It remains where its mother left it. The doe returns to nurse, then leaves again. The fawn waits. Hours of waiting. The spots protect it during these long periods alone. The pattern keeps it hidden. The fawn doesn't move unless necessary. Movement would reveal its location, so it stays still, spotted coat blending with the ground beneath it. Weeks become months. The fawn grows larger. It begins following its mother more often, less time spent lying alone, more time walking, exploring, learning. The coat remains the same through these changes, still reddish-brown, still covered with white spots. The pattern persists through early summer, but something shifts as summer progresses. Day length begins its gradual decline, not dramatically, just minutes at a time. The fawn's body notices. Hormones respond to the changing photoperiod. Chemical signals begin preparing for what comes next. Late summer arrives. August transitions into September. The fawn is 3 or 4 months old now, stronger, more capable, and the coat begins to change. Not suddenly, gradually. A few hairs loosen, a few more. The molting process starts quietly, barely noticeable at first. The spotted coat that served the fawn through its most vulnerable period is no longer needed. The fawn can walk now, can run if necessary. It doesn't rely on lying motionless for protection. The spots that once provided essential camouflage become less important. Time for a different coat. Time for a different type of protection. The molting begins on the head usually. New hair grows beneath the old hair loosens, falls away. Short, reddish-brown hair appears where spots used to be. The process moves slowly down the body, head first, then neck, then shoulders. The spots disappear section by section, replaced by solid color. By October, most fawns are spotless. The transformation is complete. The white markings have vanished entirely. The coat is now uniformly reddish-brown. No more pattern, just solid color. The fawn looks more like its mother now. The juvenile phase has ended. The spotted coat that marked it as a fawn has been replaced. But this new coat won't last long either. Already, as the spots disappear, another change is beginning. Fall deepens. Days grow shorter still. Temperatures drop. The body responds again, preparing for winter this time. The thin summer coat, whether spotted or solid, isn't sufficient for cold weather. More insulation is needed, so another molt begins. This happens to all deer, not just fawns. Adults go through it too. Every autumn brings this transformation. The process is similar, but the result is different. The short, thin hairs of summer begin falling out. Longer, thicker hairs grow in their place. The color changes too. Where summer coats were reddish, winter coats become grayish-brown. Darker, denser, completely different in character. The winter coat has 2 layers. Underneath, close to the skin, grows a dense mat of fine hair. This undercoat traps warmth. Above it, longer guard hairs extend outward. These guard hairs are hollow, filled with air. The hollow structure provides insulation. Together, the 2 layers create a system that holds heat close to the body. This molting proceeds gradually as well, starting from the head again, moving backward. The deer's appearance changes over several weeks. Patches of summer coat mixed with patches of winter coat create a mottled, uneven look. The deer appears scruffy during this transition, but eventually the process completes. The entire coat becomes winter pelage. By November, the transformation is finished. Summer's reddish tones have been replaced entirely by winter's grey-brown. The coat is thick now, much thicker than it was. Where summer hair measured less than a quarter-inch deep, winter hair extends well over an inch. The difference is substantial. The deer has essentially changed its exterior covering completely. This winter coat will remain through the cold months. It provides the insulation needed to survive freezing temperatures. The deer goes about its winter routine wrapped in this thick covering. Days pass, weeks pass. The coat continues doing its job, holding warmth in, keeping cold out. Eventually winter ends, spring returns, day length increases again. The cycle completes and begins anew. The thick winter coat, so necessary in January, becomes burdensome in April. Too much insulation when temperatures rise. Time for another change. The spring molt mirrors the autumn one. Winter coat loosens, summer coat grows beneath it. The transformation happens gradually, starting at the head again. The deer looks ragged once more as patches of grey-brown fall away to reveal reddish-brown underneath. By late spring, the winter coat is gone, summer coat has returned, thin, short, reddish-brown, ready for warm weather. The deer is back where it started appearance-wise. The cycle has completed, and if a doe gives birth, her fawn will emerge wearing that spotted coat, and the whole process will begin again. This pattern repeats annually. Every deer experiences it. Twice a year, the coat changes. Spring brings the switch from winter to summer. Autumn brings the switch from summer to winter. The timing varies slightly based on location and individual condition, but the pattern remains consistent. Fawns have the additional step of losing their spots. That happens only once, during their first autumn. After that first molt, the spots never return. Adult coat patterns are established and maintained throughout life, but the seasonal transitions continue. Summer to winter, winter to summer, year after year. The process is automatic. The deer doesn't decide when to molt. Changing day length triggers hormonal responses. The body begins the transformation without conscious input. Hair follicles activate, old hair loosens, new hair grows. The system operates reliably year after year, ensuring the deer always wears the appropriate coat for the season. Energy is required for molting. Growing new hair demands resources, protein, minerals, calories. Deer in good condition molt more quickly than deer in poor condition. Well-fed animals complete the transition efficiently. Stressed or malnourished deer take longer. The coat reflects the animal's overall health. Nursing does often molt later than other deer. The energy demands of producing milk leave less available for coat replacement. Fawns sometimes molt later too, especially if they were born late in the season or haven't grown as well as their peers. The timing varies, but eventually all deer complete the molt. The color change serves practical purposes. Summer's reddish tone helps the deer blend with vegetation in full leaf. Brown tree trunks, green leaves, reddish deer. The colors work together. Winter's grey-brown matches the season's muted palette. Grey tree bark, brown dried leaves, grey-brown deer. Again, the colors coordinate with the environment. Beyond camouflage, the color affects heat absorption. Dark colors absorb more solar radiation than light colors. Winter's darker coat captures warmth from weak winter sun. Summer's lighter coat reflects heat, helping the deer stay cooler. The color shift serves temperature regulation as much as concealment. The texture changes too. Summer hair is sleek, lying flat against the body. Winter hair is longer, standing more upright. The increased loft creates dead air space. That trapped air insulates better than hair-pressed flat would. Structure matters as much as thickness. Through all these changes, through spots and solid colors, through summer tones and winter tones, the deer adapts its exterior to match its needs. The coat transforms to suit the season: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Each brings different requirements. The deer's coat responds accordingly, changing, adapting, protecting, and so the cycle continues. Fawns are born with spots, the spots fade. Summer coats arrive, autumn brings winter coats, spring returns with summer coats. The pattern repeats, reliable as the seasons themselves. The coat changes, the deer endures. Time passes quietly, marked by the gradual transformation of hair color and texture, season following season, year following year. The doe gives birth in a quiet place, away from other deer. The fawn arrives in late spring, small and wobbly. Within minutes, the doe begins cleaning it, licking away birth fluids, learning its scent. This first contact establishes everything that follows. The doe memorizes her fawn through smell, through touch, through the sound it makes. The fawn makes a soft sound almost immediately, a quiet mew, barely audible from more than a few feet away. The doe responds with a low grunt. Back and forth, these sounds pass between mother and newborn, a conversation in simple tones. The fawn learns its mother's voice. The doe learns her fawn's call. Days pass this way. The doe nurses the fawn, then leaves it hidden in tall grass or beneath low branches. The fawn stays where it's placed. Hours go by. The fawn remains still, waiting. Eventually the doe returns. She approaches slowly, testing the air for scent. Then she calls softly. That low grunt, pitched just for this fawn. The fawn hears its mother's voice and responds, a small bleat, rising slightly in pitch. The doe moves closer, still calling. The fawn bleats again. Mother and fawn find each other through these quiet exchanges. The sounds guide them together across distances their eyes might not bridge. This pattern repeats multiple times each day. The doe leaves, the fawn waits. The doe returns, calling. The fawn answers. They reunite, the fawn nurses. And then the cycle begins again. Through repetition, the bond strengthens. The fawn knows that particular grunt means mother is near, means food is coming, means safety has returned. The sounds remain soft during these early weeks. Loud calls would attract predators, so the communication happens in whispers, just enough volume to reach across the small distance between hidden fawn and approaching mother. Enough for them to locate each other, but not enough to announce their presence to the wider world. As the fawn grows stronger, as it begins following its mother more often, the vocalizations change slightly. The fawn makes a nursing whine when it wants to feed, a rising and falling sound repeated over and over. The doe responds by stopping, allowing the fawn to nurse. Or sometimes she keeps moving, and the fawn must follow, still making its whining call. The doe uses her grunt for other purposes too. When she wants the fawn to come along, she grunts. When she senses something wrong and wants the fawn to stay put, she makes a different sound, sharper and more urgent. The fawn learns these variations. Different tones mean different things. Stay here, come now, danger near. Weeks turn into months. The fawn walks more steadily now. It explores the area around its mother, nibbling at plants, learning what to eat. But it still depends on these vocal signals. The grunt that says mother is here. The bleat that says fawn needs attention. Other does nearby have their own fawns. Sometimes the fawns approach each other curious. They might even try to nurse from the wrong mother, but does recognize their own fawn's voice, their own fawn's scent. A doe will reject a fawn that doesn't belong to her. She simply walks away, indifferent to the stranger's calls. This recognition prevents confusion. In areas where multiple does raise fawns close together, each mother must distinguish her offspring from others. The unique sound of each fawn's bleat serves as identification. The doe knows her fawn's voice the way you might know a family member's voice even without seeing them. The fawn learns its mother's call too. In a group of deer, multiple does might vocalize, but the fawn responds only to its own mother's grunt. That specific pitch, that particular rhythm. These subtle differences carry meaning. They allow communication within the complexity of a deer herd. As summer progresses, the vocalizations become less frequent. The fawn stays closer to its mother naturally. Less separation means less need to call and respond, but the sounds remain available when needed. A doe might grunt to gather her fawn if they become separated in thick brush. The fawn might bleat if it loses sight of its mother. Danger brings different sounds entirely. If a fawn finds itself truly threatened, if a predator approaches while the mother is away, the fawn might scream. Not the soft bleat of normal communication, a loud, piercing cry that carries far. This distress call is designed to reach the mother even at a distance. The doe's response to a fawn distress call is immediate. She runs toward the sound, approaching quickly despite any risk to herself. The maternal instinct triggered by that scream overrides caution. She needs to reach her fawn, needs to assess the threat, needs to provide protection if possible. But these intense vocalizations are rare. Most days pass quietly. The fawn stays near its mother. They graze together, rest together, move through their territory together. The relationship requires little vocal communication when they're side by side. Presence alone provides reassurance. The doe teaches through example. Where to find food, which plants are safe to eat, how to move quietly, when to be alert. The fawn watches, learns, copies. This education happens largely in silence. Actions speak clearly enough without need for constant vocalization. Autumn approaches. The fawn has grown substantially. It no longer nurses, it feeds itself, eating the same vegetation its mother eats. The bond remains strong, but the nature of their relationship has shifted. The fawn is more independent now, less reliant on constant maternal care, yet they still communicate vocally when needed. A doe's social grunt brings the fawn along when moving to new areas. The fawn's bleat, though less frequent now, still signals its location to its mother. The sounds persist even as the fawn matures. Winter comes. The fawn, now several months old, stays with its mother through the cold season. They might join with other deer, forming small groups that provide better protection. In these groups, the doe and her fawn maintain their connection partly through vocal recognition. Among many deer, the fawn knows its mother's voice. The doe knows her fawn's call. Spring arrives again. The doe prepares to give birth to new fawns. Her behavior toward her yearling changes. She becomes less tolerant, pushing the young deer away. The yearling must become independent now. A new generation requires the doe's attention. The yearling leaves, finding its own territory nearby. The bond with its mother loosens but doesn't break entirely. They might still interact occasionally. The doe might still respond to her yearling's voice if she hears it. But the intensive maternal care has ended. The yearling continues into life alone or joining other young deer. The cycle completes and begins again. The doe gives birth. A new fawn arrives, wet and unsteady. The doe cleans it, learning its scent and sound. Within hours, they establish their vocal connection, the quiet grunts and bleats that will guide their relationship through the fawn's first year. This pattern repeats across the landscape wherever white-tailed deer live. Every spring brings new fawns. Every doe teaches her offspring through patience and presence. The vocalizations, those simple sounds passing between mother and fawn, form the foundation of their bond. The sounds themselves are unremarkable. Soft grunts, gentle bleats, nothing dramatic or complex. Yet they carry essential information. They maintain connection across distance. They provide reassurance in a world full of threats. They allow mother and fawn to find each other when separated. Through these quiet exchanges, knowledge passes from one generation to the next. The fawn learns not just to recognize its mother's voice, but to use its own voice to communicate. It learns when to call and when to stay silent, when to respond and when to wait. The maternal bond created through these vocalizations provides the fawn with its best chance of survival. A fawn with the attentive mother, one who responds to calls and teaches through example, learns the skills needed to navigate life. The communication between them, though simple, proves vital. As evening settles across deer habitat, does and fawns prepare for night. They bed, down in safe locations, often near each other. The day's activities wind down, feeding decreases, movement slows. But even in darkness, even while resting, the bond remains. If a fawn stirs, if it needs reassurance, a quiet bleat brings a quiet response. The mother answers. The fawn settles. And the night continues, peaceful and still, with mother and fawn together, connected by sounds too soft for most to hear.